German Shepherd was mocked and ignored. Near the playground. What the baby did. Next left people in tears. What happened next will shock you. Before we begin this incredible story that you're about to listen to, please like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe to our channel, and let us know in the comments where you're watching from around the world. The Saturday morning sun painted golden streaks across Riverside Park, but something felt wrong. Parents clutched their children closer as whispers rippled through the crowded playground like poison in the wind. Near the rusty chain-link fence, a muddy German Shepherd lay trembling in the dirt, her once proud coat matted with grime and her ribs showing through patchy fur. "Stay away from that thing," a mother hissed, yanking her toddler's hand so hard the little boy stumbled. "It looks dangerous." A teenage girl with perfectly styled hair held up her phone, giggling as she filmed. "Oh my God, look at this gross dog. It's like so dirty and scary." Her friends laughed, the sound sharp and cruel in the morning air. The German Shepherd's ears pressed flat against her skull as a soccer ball rolled past, barely missing her injured paw. She flinched but didn't move, as if she'd forgotten how to run. Her dark eyes swept the crowd of humans, searching for something that wasn't there anymore. "Someone should call animal control," a man in an expensive jogging outfit declared, wiping sweat from his forehead with a designer towel. "That mud is ruining the whole atmosphere here." More people gathered, forming a loose circle around the dog like spectators at an accident. Some pulled out phones to record. Others just stared with a mixture of disgust and curiosity. A few parents covered their children's eyes, as if the sight of a suffering animal might somehow corrupt their innocence. The German Shepherd's breathing grew more labored. Her tongue hung out, dry and cracked. She tried to lift her head when a little boy on a tricycle rode too close, but the effort seemed to drain what little strength she had left. "Mommy, why is everyone looking at the doggy like that?" A small voice piped up from somewhere in the crowd. "Shh, don't look, sweetheart. Some dogs are just broken." But the German Shepherd wasn't broken. Her ears twitched at every sound, her nose tested every scent that drifted past. She was waiting, watching. Her eyes held the intelligence that the mocking crowd couldn't see, or chose to ignore. A maintenance worker wheeled his cart past the fence, glancing down at the dog with pity before shaking his head and moving on. Even the groundskeepers had learned to look away. The whispers grew louder. "How long has it been here? Is it sick? What if it bites someone?" The questions swirled around the German Shepherd like flies, but no one bothered to get close enough to find real answers. As the crowd grew thicker, something shifted in the air. A small figure pushed through the forest of legs, moving with the determined waddle of a 5-year-old on a mission. Little hands pressed against adults' knees, gently but insistently creating a path. "Excuse me," came a tiny voice, barely audible over the adult chatter. "Excuse me, please." Zara noticed her son first. "Alex, come back here right now." Her voice carried that edge every parent knows, the one that means business. She'd been distracted by her phone, scrolling through work emails while keeping half an eye on the playground. Now her heart jumped as she realized where her 5-year-old was headed. Alex's small sneakers made soft sounds against the dusty ground as he approached the German Shepherd. The crowd fell silent, watching with a mixture of fascination and horror as the tiny boy walked straight toward what they'd labeled as danger. "Someone stop him!" a woman gasped, but no one moved. They all stood frozen, phones raised, ready to capture whatever happened next. The German Shepherd lifted her head as Alex approached. For a moment, their eyes met. The wise, tired gaze of a creature who'd seen too much, and the clear, innocent stare of a child who saw only what was in front of him. Alex didn't hesitate. His small fingers worked at the zipper of his bright red hoodie, the one his grandmother had bought him just last week. The fabric was soft and warm, still carrying the faint scent of laundry detergent and home. "Here you go," Alex whispered, his voice so quiet only the dog could hear. He draped the hoodie over the German Shepherd's trembling back like a blanket, tucking the sleeves around her sides with the careful attention of someone much older. The playground fell completely silent. Even the distant traffic seemed to quiet, as if the whole world was holding its breath. The German Shepherd's eyes widened. She sniffed the hoodie gently, then looked up at Alex with something that might have been surprise, or gratitude, or hope. A parent somewhere in the crowd made a sound like a sob being swallowed. Another person lowered their phone, the cruel entertainment suddenly feeling wrong. Alex sat down cross-legged in the dirt beside the dog, not caring about his clean shorts or the dust that would definitely earn him a lecture from his mom. He unscrewed the cap from his water bottle, the blue one with the cartoon dinosaur stickers, and held it out. "You must be thirsty," he said simply. The German Shepherd looked at the water, then at the boy, then back at the water. Slowly, carefully, she extended her pink tongue and took a small drink. Then another. Her tail, which had been pressed tight against her body, gave the tiniest wag. Alex's face broke into a grin. "There you go, girl. That's better." The crowd stirred uneasily. This wasn't what they'd expected. Where was the aggression they'd assumed? Where was the danger they'd all been so afraid of? Zara pushed through the circle of onlookers, her heart pounding. "Alex, honey, you need to come. Away from there right now." But Alex wasn't listening. He was too busy watching the German Shepherd's breathing slow to a more normal rhythm. Too busy noticing how her eyes had started to focus better, how some of the tension had left her muscles under his grandmother's red hoodie. "She's not scary, Mom," Alex said without looking up. "She's just sad." The words hit the crowd like a physical blow. Several people stepped back, suddenly seeing the scene through different eyes. The phones that had been recording for social media slowly lowered. The laughter died completely. Zara approached cautiously, torn between protective instinct and something else. Something that might have been pride in her son's courage. "Alex, we don't know anything about this dog. She might be sick or—" "She's not mean," Alex interrupted, his small hand resting gently on the German Shepherd's head. "Look at her eyes, Mom. They're nice eyes." And somehow, impossibly, the German Shepherd did look different now. With the child's kindness wrapped around her like a shield, she seemed less like a threat and more like what she really was, a lost, hurting animal who'd been forgotten by the world. The first tear fell from someone in the crowd, then another. The teenage girl who'd been filming put her phone away, her cheeks burning with shame. The man in the jogging outfit cleared his throat and looked away. But Alex didn't notice the adult's reactions. He was too busy humming softly to the German Shepherd, a wordless tune his grandmother used to sing. The dog's eyes drifted closed for the first time in what might have been days, her head finally coming to rest against the little boy's knee. For just a moment, the playground was transformed. The harsh whispers and cruel laughter faded away, replaced by something tender and pure. A 5-year-old boy and a forgotten dog, sharing a moment of perfect understanding, while the world watched and remembered what kindness looked like. But this was only the beginning. Neither Alex nor the crowd around them could have guessed what would happen next, or how this simple act of compassion would uncover secrets that someone had worked very hard to keep hidden. The German Shepherd's breathing had steadied, but her eyes remained alert, scanning the playground with an intensity that seemed almost human. She was still waiting for something, still watching for someone. And deep beneath the playground equipment, hidden in the shadows where no adult thought to look, something metal caught the afternoon light and blinked red in the darkness. Alex's small fingers moved gently along the German Shepherd's side, feeling for injuries the way he'd seen his mom check him for scrapes after playground falls. The dog remained perfectly still, as if she understood that this tiny human was trying to help her. But as Alex's hand moved lower, near her ribs, he felt something that made him pause. "Mom, come look at this," Alex called softly, not wanting to startle the dog. His voice carried that serious tone children use when they've discovered something important that adults might have missed. Zara approached carefully, her maternal instincts still on high alert despite the peaceful scene before her. "What is it, sweetheart?" Alex's finger traced something beneath the red hoodie. "There's something stuck under here. It feels like the strap on my backpack, but torn." The German Shepherd's ears perked up at the word strap, and she turned her head to look directly at Alex with an intensity that made several onlookers step back. It wasn't aggression, it was recognition, as if the word had triggered a memory buried deep in her canine mind. "Let me see, honey." Zara knelt beside her son, her protective instincts warring with curiosity. As she lifted the edge of the hoodie, her breath caught. Tangled in the dog's matted fur was indeed a strap, black nylon, partially torn, with metal hardware that had clearly been ripped from something larger. Alex's eyes grew wide with the excitement of discovery. It's like she escaped from something, like in the movies. But it was what Alex spotted next that would change everything. As the German Shepherd shifted slightly, trying to get more comfortable under the warm hoodie, something small and metallic fell from her fur and landed in the dust with a tiny clink. Alex's sharp 5-year-old eyes caught the movement immediately. "Ooh, what's that?" He reached for the object before any adult could stop him. "Alex, don't touch," Zara started, but her son had already picked up the small metal tag. The crowd pressed closer, their earlier fear replaced by curiosity. Even the teenagers who'd been mocking the dog earlier found themselves leaning in to see what the little boy had found. Alex held up the tag, turning it in the sunlight. The metal was scratched and dirty, but 3 letters were clearly visible, stamped in official-looking font. H-E-L. "Help!" squeaked a young girl in pigtails. "It says help! The doggy was asking for help!" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Parents exchanged glances, suddenly feeling guilty about their earlier reactions. The woman who'd been filming deleted her video, her cheeks burning with shame. But Mr. Davidson, the park supervisor, pushed through the crowd with his clipboard and official badge, his face set in the stern expression he used for dealing with problems. His polo shirt was perfectly pressed, his name tag gleaming, and his whole demeanor screamed bureaucracy and image management. "What's all this commotion?" Mr. Davidson's voice cut through the crowd like a knife. He was the kind of man who saw rules before he saw people, regulations before he saw suffering. "I've had 3 complaints about a dangerous animal in the past 15 minutes. Alex looked up from where he sat beside the German Shepherd, the metal tag still clutched in his small fist. "She's not dangerous, sir. She's just lost. Look, she has a help tag." Mr. Davidson's eyes fixed on the dog with obvious distaste. Her muddy fur, her thin frame, her presence in his pristine park. It all represented the kind of mess that made his job complicated. That's clearly just costume jewelry from some kid's dress-up game. This animal is a liability issue waiting to happen. The German Shepherd seemed to sense the hostility in Mr. Davidson's voice. She pressed closer to Alex, her dark eyes never leaving the park supervisor's face. There was something almost human in her gaze, a wariness that spoke of experience with people who wielded authority without compassion. "But look at the letters," Zara found herself saying, surprising herself by speaking up. H-E-L. That's not random costume jewelry. That looks official. Mr. Davidson snatched the tag from Alex's small hands, examining it with the same expression he might use for a parking violation. It's scratched metal junk, could say anything. Could be from a Halloween costume from 3 years ago. The point is, this animal is creating a disturbance and potentially endangering our park visitors. Alex's lower lip trembled, not from fear but from the injustice of adults who couldn't see what was right in front of them. "She's not endangering anyone. She's hurt and scared, and she needs help." "That's not your decision to make, son." Mr. Davidson pulled out his phone with the self-important air of someone who'd found the perfect solution. "I'm calling animal control. They'll handle this properly." The crowd shifted uncomfortably. What had started as idle curiosity and cruel entertainment was evolving into something that felt much more serious. Parents found themselves looking at their own children, wondering what lesson was being taught here. Zara felt something shift inside her chest. That protective instinct that had always centered on Alex now somehow expanding to include the gentle creature her son had befriended. Maybe we should wait. Try to figure out what the tag really means. "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but I have protocols to follow." Mr. Davidson's smile was the kind that never reached his eyes. "This park serves over 2,000 families. I can't risk their safety for one stray dog, no matter how touching the situation might appear." The German Shepherd's tail, which had been wagging slightly under Alex's gentle attention, pressed flat against her body again. She seemed to understand that the man with the clipboard represented danger of a different kind, the danger of being labeled, categorized, and disposed of efficiently. Alex's small hand found the dog's head again, his fingers working gently through her matted fur. "Don't worry, girl. I won't let them take you." The simple declaration from such a small voice carried more weight than any of the adults' arguments. Several people in the crowd found themselves blinking back tears, remembering their own childhood promises and wondering when they'd stop believing that one person could make a difference. But Mr. Davidson was already dialing, his bureaucratic wheels in motion. "Yes, this is Davidson at Riverside Park. I need a pickup for a stray German Shepherd, potentially aggressive. Yes, I'll wait for the truck." As he spoke, something curious happened. The German Shepherd's ears perked up, not at Mr. Davidson's words, but at a sound none of the humans had noticed yet. A low rumbling from somewhere beneath the playground equipment. Alex felt it before he heard it, a vibration through the ground that made the dog shift restlessly beside him. "Mom, do you feel that?" Zara paused, suddenly aware of a strange sensation under her feet. It wasn't earthquake-like, but there was definitely something happening underground. "What is that?" The German Shepherd was on her feet now, the red hoodie slipping slightly but still draped across her back. Her nose was working overtime, testing the air with an urgency that made several parents instinctively move closer to their children. "It's probably just the subway," Mr. Davidson said dismissively, but his voice carried less confidence than his words. The nearest subway line was 12 blocks away, and besides, this rumbling had a different quality, more mechanical, more immediate. Alex crawled forward, following the dog's intense stare toward the elaborate playground structure. The tunnels and slides and climbing equipment suddenly looked different, more mysterious. "She's looking at something under there." The crowd followed his gaze, squinting into the shadows beneath the playground, where the afternoon sun couldn't reach. For most of them, it was just darkness. But Alex, at his 5-year-old height, had a different angle. "There's something shiny down there," he announced, pointing toward a section where the playground support beams created a small crawl space. "It's blinking." Mr. Davidson's phone call had ended, and he now stood with his hands on his hips, watching the scene with growing irritation. "Son, there's nothing down there but playground maintenance equipment. You're letting your imagination run away with you." But the German Shepherd clearly disagreed. She limped toward the playground structure, Alex's red hoodie still draped across her back like a cape. Her movements were deliberate, purposeful, as if she was finally remembering why she'd been waiting here. Zara felt her heart rate pick up. There was something about the dog's behavior that spoke of training, of purpose. This wasn't random wandering. This was a mission being resumed after an interruption. "Alex, stay back from there," she called, but her son was already following the German Shepherd with the fearless curiosity that only children possess. "Mom, I think she's trying to show us something." Alex's voice echoed slightly as he peered into the shadowy space beneath the climbing structure. "There's definitely something here." The rumbling sound grew louder, and now even the adults could hear it clearly. It wasn't mechanical equipment or distant traffic. It sounded almost like scratching, like something trying to dig its way out from underground. The German Shepherd whined softly, a sound filled with urgency and what might have been anxiety. She looked back at Alex, then at the darkness under the playground, then at Alex again, as if trying to communicate something desperately important. Mr. Davidson checked his watch with obvious impatience. "Animal control should be here in 20 minutes. Until then, I need everyone to maintain a safe distance from the animal." But Alex wasn't listening to the park supervisor. He was listening to something else entirely, a faint sound that seemed to be coming from directly beneath his feet. It was barely audible, almost like a whisper carried on air currents from deep underground. "Mom," Alex said, his voice suddenly very serious, "I think there's someone down there." The words hit the crowd like a physical blow. Parents instinctively moved closer to their children. Teenagers stopped texting and started paying attention. Even Mr. Davidson's official composure cracked slightly. "That's impossible," he said, but his voice had lost its authoritative edge. "The playground was inspected just last month. There's nothing underground except utility lines and drainage." The German Shepherd's whine grew more insistent. She was pacing now, despite her injured paw, moving back and forth in front of the playground structure like a soldier on guard duty. The red hoodie fluttered with her movements, making her look like some kind of canine superhero. Alex got down on his hands and knees, peering into the shadows with the determination of a child on a treasure hunt. What he saw made his breath catch in his throat. There, wedged between two drainage pipes and partially hidden by years of accumulated leaves and debris, was something that definitely didn't belong in a playground's underground infrastructure. It was rectangular, about the size of a lunchbox, and it was indeed blinking, a small red light that pulsed steadily in the darkness. "I can see it," Alex called out, his excitement overriding any sense of caution. "There's a box down here, and it's got a light on it." The crowd pressed closer, their earlier fear of the German Shepherd completely forgotten in the face of this new mystery. Parents found themselves kneeling in the dirt, trying to get a better look at what their children were pointing at. Zara felt her world tilt slightly. Whatever was happening here, it was bigger than a lost dog and a kind little boy. The German Shepherd's behavior, the mysterious tag, the hidden object, it all felt connected in ways that made her both curious and deeply nervous. The rumbling sound came again, louder this time, and with it came something else, a voice, faint and muffled, but undeniably human, calling out from somewhere far, below the playground equipment. Alex looked up at his mother, his eyes wide with the kind of excitement and terror that comes with discovering that the world is far more mysterious and dangerous than anyone had ever told him. "Mom," he whispered, "I think the doggie's been trying to tell us something really important." The words hung in the air like a challenge to everything the adults thought they understood about the situation. Zara knelt beside her son, her protective instincts warring with a growing sense that Alex might be right about something much bigger than any of them had realized. "Let me see what you're looking at, honey." Zara's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she peered into the shadowy space beneath the playground equipment. What she saw made her breath catch. The object Alex had spotted was definitely not playground maintenance equipment. It was a waterproof case, the kind used for emergency supplies or sensitive equipment. And the steady red blinking light suggested it was still active, still serving some purpose that none of them understood. The German Shepherd pressed closer to them, her nose working overtime as she tested the air currents coming from the underground space. Her behavior had shifted from the resigned exhaustion they'd first witnessed to something more alert, more purposeful. She was no longer just a lost dog seeking comfort. She was a creature with a mission, trying to communicate something urgent. "Mrs. Thompson, you need to get your child away from there immediately." Mr. Davidson's voice cut through the crowd's murmurs, sharp with authority and barely concealed panic. He'd noticed the change in atmosphere, the way the crowd was starting to look at him with questions rather than compliance. But Zara found herself standing up slowly, Alex's small hand clutched in hers, and facing the park supervisor with a calm she didn't entirely feel. "I think we need to understand what's down there first. Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but this is a safety issue. That could be anything. Old construction debris, hazardous materials, discarded electronics. The last thing we need is civilians poking around in city infrastructure." Alex tugged on his mother's sleeve, his voice carrying the impatience children feel when adults are missing something obvious. "But Mom, the doggie knows what it is. Look at her." The German Shepherd was indeed behaving strangely. She'd positioned herself directly over the spot where the blinking light was visible, and she kept looking back at the crowd with an expression that seemed almost human in its urgency. Her injured paw was forgotten. Whatever was happening here was more important than her own pain. A woman in the crowd, Mrs. Chen, who taught second grade at the local elementary school, spoke up with the quiet authority that comes from years of dealing with children and their discoveries. "Has anyone considered that maybe we should listen to what they're both trying to tell us?" Mr. Davidson's clipboard cracked under the pressure of his grip. "Mrs. Chen, with all due respect, we cannot make decisions based on the behavior of a stray dog and the imagination of a 5-year-old. I have protocols to follow." But Alex wasn't backing down. The injustice of adults who couldn't see what was right in front of them filled his small chest with the kind of righteous anger that only children possess. "It's not imagination. There's something down there, and she's been guarding it." As if responding to Alex's words, the rumbling sound came again, much louder this time. It wasn't coming from deep underground like subway vibrations. It was coming from directly beneath the playground equipment, maybe 6 feet down at most. And with it came something that made every parent in the crowd take a step backward. A voice, faint, muffled by earth and concrete, but unmistakably human. And it was calling for help. The playground fell absolutely silent. Even the distant traffic seemed to quiet, as if the entire world was straining to hear what came next. Did everyone else hear that? Zara's voice was barely above a whisper. The German Shepherd's whine grew more urgent. She began to dig at the base of the playground structure with her uninjured paw, sending up small clouds of dust and debris. The red hoodie fluttered around her like a cape as she worked with desperate energy. "Oh my God," breathed a teenage boy who'd been filming everything on his phone. "There's actually someone trapped down there." Mr. Davidson's face had gone pale, but his bureaucratic training kicked in like armor against reality. "Even if that's true, this is now a matter for emergency services. Everyone needs to step back while I call 911. But Alex was already moving. With the fearless determination that comes from being too young to fully understand danger, he dropped to his hands and knees and began crawling toward the space beneath the playground equipment. "Alex, no!" Zara lunged forward, but her son was smaller and quicker. He disappeared into the shadows before she could grab him. The crowd held its collective breath as Alex's voice echoed from the darkness beneath the playground. "I can see it better now. It's like a big lunchbox, and there's stuff written on it. Alex, you come out of there right now." Zara's voice carried every ounce of maternal authority she possessed, but her son was beyond listening. "Mom, there's a whole bunch of things down here, and the voice is coming from deeper down, like there's a hole or something." The German Shepherd's agitation was increasing by the second. She paced back and forth at the entrance to the crawl space, whining and looking back at the adults as if trying to explain something desperately important. Mr. Davidson had his phone out and was barking orders into it. "Yes, this is an emergency. We need fire and rescue at Riverside Park immediately. Possible person trapped. Underground. And yes, I still need animal control." From beneath the playground equipment, Alex's excited voice continued his play-by-play discovery. "There's words on the box. It says, Koda, Coda, and there's more stuff, like medical stuff in bags." The German Shepherd's reaction to hearing the name was immediate and dramatic. She sat bolt upright, her ears perked forward, her tail beginning to wag for the first time since the crowd had noticed her. She barked once, a sharp, clear sound that carried more intelligence and purpose than any random noise. "Did that dog just respond to the name Coda?" Mrs. Chen asked, her teacher's mind immediately grasping the connection. Zara felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in her mind. "Alex, can you see anything else written on that box?" "There's more letters, H-E-L, and then some other stuff that's too dirty to read. But Mom, I think the voice is coming from a pipe or something, like someone stuck down in the drainage system." The realization hit the crowd like a physical blow. This wasn't just a lost dog and a curious child. This was a rescue situation that had been unfolding right under their noses while they'd been too busy judging and filming to pay attention. Mr. Davidson was sweating now, his perfectly pressed shirt beginning to show stress stains. "The fire department will be here in 8 minutes. Everyone needs to maintain a safe perimeter." But the German Shepherd, Coda, wasn't interested in safe perimeters. She began digging more frantically at the base of the playground structure, her injured paw forgotten in her urgency. Dirt and debris flew behind her as she worked with the focused intensity of a creature who knew exactly what she was looking for. "She's trying to help," Alex called from inside the crawl space. "Mom, I think she's been trying to dig someone out." Zara made a decision that went against every protective instinct she possessed. Instead of ordering Alex out of the dangerous space, she found herself kneeling at the entrance to the crawl space, adding her voice to her son's. "Alex, can you see any way to reach whoever's calling for help? There's like a grate or something, but it's really heavy. And there's water down there, but not a lot. Mom, I think someone fell down there and got stuck." The voice from underground came again, clearer now that Alex was closer to its source. It was weak, hoarse, but definitely calling for help. And now that the crowd was really listening, they could make out words. "Please. Been here. 2 days. Can't climb out. 2 days." The German Shepherd, Coda, had been guarding this spot for 2 days, waiting for someone to pay attention, someone to understand what she was trying to communicate. While adults had mocked her and children had been pulled away from her, she'd been keeping vigil over someone who needed help. Tears started flowing freely through the crowd. The woman who'd been filming deleted her video and put her phone away entirely. The man in the jogging outfit knelt down and began helping Coda dig, his expensive running shoes forgotten. "We need tools," someone called out. "Something to move that grate Alex is talking about." "The maintenance shed," Mrs. Chen pointed toward a small building near the park's entrance. "There should be crowbars and shovels in there." Mr. Davidson was trapped between his protocols and the reality unfolding in front of him. Nobody is authorized to access city maintenance equipment without proper... "Oh, shut up, Davidson," snapped an elderly man who'd been watching the whole scene unfold. "There's someone trapped down there, and that dog's been trying to tell us for 2 days. This isn't about your precious protocols anymore." The crowd was transforming before everyone's eyes. What had started as idle curiosity and casual cruelty was becoming something else entirely. A community united by the realization that they'd almost missed something important because they'd been too quick to judge and too slow to listen. Alex's voice echoed from the crawl space again, but this time it carried a different tone. "Mom, I found something else. It's like a vest or something, but it's all torn up. Can you bring it out here, sweetheart? It's really dirty, but yeah, okay, I'm coming out." Alex emerged from beneath the playground equipment, looking like he'd been exploring caves, dirt streaking his face and coating his clothes. But his eyes were bright with the satisfaction of discovery, and in his small hands he carried something that would change how everyone understood the situation. It was indeed a vest, but not just any vest. Even covered in dirt and torn from whatever trauma had separated it from its wearer, the official patches and reflective strips were still visible. And across the back, in letters that had been designed to be visible in emergency situations, were words that made everything click into place. "Therapy Dog Unit," Zara read aloud, her voice breaking slightly. "Emergency Response Team." Coda's reaction to seeing the vest was immediate and heartbreaking. She approached Alex slowly, her nose working to catch every scent the fabric carried. When she reached him, she gently took a corner of the vest in her mouth and held it for a moment, her dark eyes closing, as if she was remembering something precious. "She's not a stray," whispered someone in the crowd. "She's a working dog, a rescue dog." "And someone from her team is trapped down there," added Mrs. Chen, her teacher's mind putting together the pieces faster than most. "She's been trying to get help for her handler." The sound of sirens in the distance cut through the emotional revelation. But instead of relief, many in the crowd felt a new urgency. The fire department would bring professional rescue equipment and expertise, but they would also bring questions about how a trained rescue dog and her handler had ended up in this situation in the first place. Mr. Davidson was talking rapidly into his phone, trying to explain a situation that had spiraled far beyond his ability to control with clipboards and protocols. "Yes, it appears to be a member of emergency services who's been trapped. No, I don't know how long. Yes, the dog appears to be legitimate." Alex stood in the center of it all, still holding the torn vest, looking between Coda and the adults with the satisfaction of someone who'd been right all along. The German Shepherd sat beside him, no longer the object of fear and mockery, but recognized for what she truly was, a hero who'd never given up on her mission. But even as the sirens grew louder and help approached, Coda's behavior suggested that the real emergency was far from over. Her ears were still pricked forward, her body still tense with purpose. Whatever had happened here, whatever had separated her from her handler and left them both in danger, Coda seemed to know that the hardest part was still ahead. The red hoodie still draped across her back fluttered in the breeze like a banner of hope, but her eyes held secrets that no one had yet thought to ask about. And somewhere in the distance, barely audible over the approaching sirens, came the sound of footsteps running toward the playground, footsteps that didn't belong to the fire department and that made Coda's hackles rise in warning. The first fire truck arrived with a screech of brakes and a blast of diesel exhaust that temporarily overwhelmed the park's peaceful atmosphere. Captain Rodriguez jumped down from the cab, his experienced eyes immediately taking in the scene. The crowd gathered around the playground equipment, the small boy holding what looked like official gear, and most notably, the German Shepherd whose posture spoke of professional training rather than random wandering. "What do we have here?" Captain Rodriguez's voice carried the calm authority of someone who'd seen every kind of emergency situation imaginable. Zara stepped forward, still holding Alex's dirt-streaked hand. "There's someone trapped in the drainage system under the playground. They've been calling for help, and this dog, her name is Coda, she's been trying to get our attention for 2 days." "The dog led you to the victim?" Captain Rodriguez knelt down to Coda's level, his trained eye noting the torn therapy vest Alex was still clutching, the makeshift red hoodie bandage, and most importantly, the intelligent alertness in the German Shepherd's dark eyes. "She's been guarding this spot," Alex piped up with the confidence of someone who'd been proven right about something important. Everyone thought she was just a scary stray dog, but she was really trying to save someone. Captain Rodriguez nodded grimly. Cases involving working dogs separated from their handlers usually meant something had gone very wrong, very quickly. "Show me exactly where you heard the voice coming." As Alex led the captain toward the crawl space beneath the playground equipment, Coda's behavior became even more agitated. Her ears were rotating like radar dishes, picking up sounds the humans couldn't detect. Her nose worked constantly, testing air currents for scents that carried information about approaching threats. The approaching footsteps were getting closer, and now even some of the adults could hear them. The sound of people moving quickly across the park's gravel paths, not with the organized efficiency of emergency responders, but with the urgent, almost panicked rhythm of people who were late for something important. "Captain Rodriguez," called one of his firefighters. "We've got company approaching from the east entrance. 2 males, moving fast, no official vehicles." Coda's reaction was immediate and dramatic. The gentle, patient dog who'd sat calmly with Alex transformed into something entirely different. Not aggressive, but alert in a way that spoke of professional training and potential danger. Her body language screamed warning to anyone who knew how to read it. Mr. Davidson, who'd been trying to fade into the background as the situation spiraled beyond his control, suddenly stepped forward with nervous energy. "Those are probably animal control officers. I called them about her before we knew." But Captain Rodriguez's expression suggested he didn't believe that explanation. Animal control officers didn't run across parks like they were chasing someone, and they certainly didn't travel without official vehicles and equipment. The footsteps were close enough now that the crowd could see 2 figures approaching through the trees. They were dressed in dark casual clothes, not uniforms, and they moved with the kind of purposeful stride that suggested they knew exactly where they were going and what they expected to find there. "Ma'am, I need you and your son to step back from the dog," one of the men called out as they approached. His voice carried artificial friendliness that didn't match the tension in his movements. "We're here to collect our animal." Coda's growl was low and rumbling, a sound that seemed to come from deep in her chest. It wasn't the random aggression of a frightened stray. It was the controlled warning of a trained professional who recognized a threat. Alex looked up at his mother with confusion and dawning fear. "Mom, why is Coda scared of them?" Zara's protective instincts went into overdrive. Something about the 2 men felt wrong. Their timing, their lack of official identification, the way they called Coda our animal instead of using her name. "Who exactly are you with?" The taller of the 2 men produced a wallet that he flashed quickly before putting it away. "Private security contractors. The dog is part of a specialized program, and she's been reported missing from our facility." Captain Rodriguez stepped between the men and the crowd, his body, language shifting subtly into a more defensive posture. "Gentlemen, we're in the middle of a rescue operation here. The dog has located someone trapped in the underground drainage system. If she's truly your responsibility, then you need to explain how she and her handler ended up in this situation." "Handler?" The second man's voice carried surprise that seemed genuine. "This animal doesn't have a handler. She's part of a research program, not field operations." The contradiction hung in the air like smoke. Alex was still holding the torn therapy vest with its clear emergency response team patches. But these men were claiming Coda was part of a research program, not rescue operations. Coda's agitation was increasing by the second. She kept looking between the approaching men and the drainage grate where her partner was trapped, as if trying to decide between protecting the crowd and completing her mission. "Research program for what?" Zara found herself asking, her journalist instincts kicking in despite her fear. The taller man's smile became strained. "That's proprietary information, ma'am. What's important is that this animal needs to come with us before she causes any more complications." From beneath the playground equipment, the trapped voice called out again, weaker now, but still audible. "Coda, is that you, girl? Don't let them take you." The words hit the crowd like a physical blow. Whoever was trapped down there knew Coda personally, and they were specifically warning her against these men who claimed to be her legitimate handlers. Captain Rodriguez's radio crackled to life. "Rodriguez, this is dispatch. We've got a BOLO alert for a missing K9 unit. German Shepherd, female, name of Coda. Last seen with Specialist Martinez during a training exercise that went wrong 2 days ago." The second man stepped forward quickly. "That's outdated information. The dog was transferred to our program last week. We have the paperwork back at our facility." But Alex, with the brutal honesty of childhood, pointed out the obvious flaw in their story. "If she's yours, then why doesn't she want to go with you? Dogs always want to go with their real families." It was such a simple observation, but it cut through all the adult complications and bureaucratic double talk. Coda's body language made it clear that these men represented danger, not rescue. The trapped voice called out again, stronger this time, as if hearing the conversation above had given them new energy. Coda's partner is Specialist Martinez, Emergency Services. Been trying to reach the surface for 2 days. Water level rising. Captain Rodriguez made a decision that would change everything. "Gentlemen, I'm going to need to see proper identification and authorization before this dog goes anywhere. Right now, she's the only link we have to someone who needs immediate rescue." The two men exchanged glances, and something shifted in their demeanor. The artificial friendliness dropped away, replaced by something harder and more urgent. "Captain, you don't understand the situation here," the taller man said, his voice taking on a threatening edge. "This animal is involved in classified research, national security implications. We need to secure her immediately." But Coda had made her own decision. With a movement too quick for anyone to stop, she darted toward the drainage grate and began digging frantically with both front paws, her injured foot forgotten in her desperation. Dirt and debris flew as she worked to widen the opening. "She's trying to reach her partner," Alex called out, dropping the torn vest and moving to help despite his mother's protests. The scene erupted into controlled chaos. Captain Rodriguez barked orders into his radio for additional backup and specialized rescue equipment. Several crowd members joined Alex in helping Coda dig. Mr. Davidson stood frozen, his clipboard hanging uselessly at his side as his orderly world dissolved around him. And the two mysterious men stepped back, speaking rapidly into phones of their own, their carefully constructed cover story unraveling as fast as Coda could dig. From the drainage system below, Specialist Martinez's voice carried new hope and new urgency. "Coda, good girl, the water's rising faster now. Need to hurry." The crisis was reaching a tipping point. Whatever had separated Coda from her partner, whatever had led to this desperate 2-day vigil, the truth was about to come out. And judging by the increasingly frantic phone calls the two mysterious men were making, there were people who would do anything to prevent that truth from surfacing. Alex looked up from where he was helping Coda dig, his face streaked with dirt and determination. "Mom, why are those men trying to take Coda away when her friend needs help?" It was the question that cut to the heart of everything. Why would anyone try to separate a rescue dog from a trapped partner? What kind of research program would claim ownership of an emergency response team? And what had gone so wrong during a training exercise that a specialist and their K9 partner had ended up trapped and abandoned for 2 days? Captain Rodriguez was coordinating with his team, but his eyes kept returning to the two men who were backing away from the scene while maintaining heated phone conversations. His instincts, honed by years of emergency response, told him that this rescue was about to become something much more complicated. The afternoon sun was beginning to lower in the sky, casting longer shadows across the playground, but the red hoodie draped across Coda's back caught the light like a beacon as she worked tirelessly to save her partner. And deep in the drainage system, water continued to rise towards someone who'd been waiting for rescue that should have come 2 days ago. Thunder rumbled in the distance, not the mechanical rumbling they had heard earlier, but real storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The weather was about to add another layer of urgency to a situation that was already balancing on the edge of disaster. Alex's small hands worked alongside Coda's paws, clearing debris from the drainage grate with the focused determination of someone who understood that every second mattered. His red hoodie was gone, draped across his four-legged partner in this rescue mission, but his heart was bigger than any storm that might be coming. The crowd had transformed completely from their earlier mockery and fear. Now they formed a protective circle around the rescue operation, their bodies unconsciously blocking the view of the mysterious men who were still making increasingly desperate phone calls. Whatever was really happening here, whatever forces had conspired to leave a rescue specialist and their K9 partner trapped and forgotten, the truth was about to come out. And Alex and Coda were going to make sure that truth included a rescue, no matter who tried to stop them. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine whether justice would prevail or whether powerful interests would succeed in covering up whatever had gone wrong during that training exercise 2 days ago. But first, they had to get Specialist Martinez out of the rising water before the approaching storm made rescue impossible. The drainage grate was finally loose enough to move, thanks to the combined efforts of Coda's desperate digging and the crowd's determination to help. Captain Rodriguez and his team had brought proper equipment, but it was Alex's small hands and Coda's relentless pawing that had done the crucial preliminary work. "Step back, everyone," Captain Rodriguez called out as his firefighters positioned hydraulic tools around the grate. "We're going to lift this thing and get eyes on the situation below." But as the heavy metal grate was lifted away, revealing a dark opening that dropped down into the city's storm drainage system, something extraordinary happened. The moment Coda saw the opening, she began to whine, not with fear or anxiety, but with recognition and desperate joy. From the darkness below came a voice, stronger now and filled with emotion. "Coda! Oh my God, Coda, is that really you, girl?" Coda's response was immediate and heartbreaking. She barked once, a sharp sound of pure communication, and began pawing at the edge of the opening as if trying to climb down to reach her partner. Alex looked down into the drainage tunnel, his young eyes adjusting to the darkness faster than the adults. What he saw made him gasp. "There's someone down there! I can see them!" Captain Rodriguez secured a safety line and lowered a powerful flashlight into the opening. The beam illuminated a scene that explained everything and raised new questions at the same time. About 8 feet down, in a concrete drainage channel that was normally dry but now contained several inches of flowing water, sat a woman in her 30s wearing the torn remains of what had once been an official emergency services uniform. Her leg was clearly injured, twisted at an angle that suggested a serious break, and she was using her backpack to stay elevated above the rising water level. "Specialist Sarah Martinez, Emergency K9 Response Unit," the woman called up, her voice hoarse but strong. "Thank God someone finally found us. I've been calling for help for 2 days." Coda's reaction to hearing her partner's voice was pure joy mixed with desperate concern. She tried to squeeze past Captain Rodriguez to get closer to the opening, whining and pawing at the concrete edge. "Easy, girl," Captain Rodriguez said gently, recognizing the behavior of a working dog reunited with their handler. "We're going to get her out. You did good, Coda. You did real good." But the two mysterious men, who had been making increasingly frantic phone calls, suddenly stepped forward with renewed urgency. "Captain, that woman is not authorized to be removed from this location," the taller man announced. "This is part of an ongoing classified operation, and both the specialist and the K9 unit need to be transferred to our custody immediately." Alex looked up from the drainage opening with the kind of outrage that only children can muster when adults say something completely unreasonable. "She's hurt and she's been trapped for 2 days. How can taking care of her be wrong?" Captain Rodriguez's expression had hardened into something that suggested he'd dealt with bureaucratic interference before, and he wasn't impressed. "Gentlemen, I don't care what kind of operation this supposedly is. I have an injured emergency responder trapped in a flood zone with a storm approaching. She's getting medical attention, and she's getting it now." "You don't understand the implications," the second man insisted, stepping closer to the drainage opening. Specialist Martinez was involved in a training accident that's being investigated at the highest levels. Moving her could compromise national security. From below, Sarah Martinez's voice carried up with a bitter laugh. "Training accident? Is that what they're calling it now?" The crowd exchanged glances. Something about the way she said those words suggested that whatever had happened 2 days ago wasn't any kind of accident. Zara found herself stepping closer to the opening, her protective instincts extending beyond just Alex to include the trapped woman below. "What really happened, Specialist Martinez?" "We were conducting a routine search and rescue training exercise in the old tunnel system," Sarah's voice echoed up from the drainage channel. "Coda and I were testing new tracking protocols when the tunnel entrance was deliberately sealed while we were inside." The words hit the crowd like a physical blow. Deliberately sealed, not an accident, not a training mishap. Someone had intentionally trapped a rescue specialist and her K9 partner underground. The two mysterious men stepped back, their phone conversations becoming even more heated and urgent. That's impossible," Mr. Davidson stammered, his bureaucratic mind struggling to process the implications. Who would do such a thing? Alex, with the directness that only children possess, asked the obvious question. Were the bad guys trying to hurt you and Coda? Sarah's response came after a pause that seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds. Honey, I think some people didn't want us to finish our mission. Coda had found something during the training exercise, something that certain people didn't want found. Captain Rodriguez was lowering rescue equipment into the drainage channel, but his attention was divided between the technical aspects of the rescue and the increasingly suspicious behavior of the two men who claimed authority over the situation. Found what? Zara asked, her journalist instincts fully engaged now. Evidence, Sarah replied simply. Evidence of things that were supposed to stay buried. Coda's nose doesn't lie, and she'd detected something in those tunnels that connected to some very expensive construction projects around the city. The implications hung in the air like storm clouds. Whatever Coda had found during that training exercise, it was significant enough that someone had been willing to trap a rescue specialist and her K9 partner underground, rather than let them report their discoveries. Alex looked between Coda and the adults, his young mind putting together pieces that the grown-ups were still struggling to understand. So the bad guys trapped Specialist Martinez so she couldn't tell anyone what Coda found. That's about the size of it, kiddo. Sarah's voice carried exhaustion and determination in equal measure. But Coda got out through a drainage pipe that was too small for me to follow. She's been trying to get help ever since. The German Shepherd's 2-day vigil at the playground suddenly made perfect sense. She hadn't been a lost stray at all. She'd been a professional rescuer trying to save her partner, waiting patiently for humans to stop judging her appearance long enough to listen to what she was trying to communicate. Captain Rodriguez had his rescue harness ready, but the two mysterious men stepped forward again, this time with more aggressive postures. Captain, I'm ordering you to step away from this operation, the taller man said, his hand moving to his jacket in a way that suggested he might be armed. This is now a matter of federal jurisdiction. But Alex, who had been quietly processing everything he'd heard, suddenly spoke up with the kind of clarity that cuts through adult complications like a knife. If they were really the good guys, he announced, his 5-year-old voice carrying across the entire crowd, they would want to save Specialist Martinez, not stop us from helping her. The simple logic was devastating. Every parent in the crowd looked at the two men with new understanding. If these men truly had legitimate authority over Sarah Martinez and Coda, they would be facilitating the rescue, not trying to prevent it. Coda seemed to sense the shift in the crowd's understanding. She positioned herself between Alex and the two men, her body language shifting into protection mode while still maintaining visual contact with the drainage opening where her partner waited. You know what? Mrs. Chen said, her teacher's voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent years dealing with bullies. I think we need to hear more about what Coda found before anyone goes anywhere. The crowd murmured agreement, their earlier transformation from mockers to helpers, now evolving into something more powerful, a community united in defense of truth and justice. Sarah Martinez's voice carried up from below, stronger now that she knew help was finally coming. Coda detected human remains in those tunnels. Old remains, but ones that certain people in city government would prefer, stayed lost. The training exercise was just cover for what was really supposed to be a disposal operation. The words hit like lightning. This wasn't just about covering up inconvenient discoveries. This was about covering up evidence of crimes that someone with power and influence wanted to keep buried. Thunder rumbled overhead, much closer now, and the first drops of rain began to fall. The storm that had been threatening was finally arriving, adding natural urgency to a situation that was already balanced on the edge of disaster. Captain Rodriguez made his decision. I'm bringing her up now, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with my supervisor after we get this woman to a hospital. The rescue harness dropped into the drainage channel, and Sarah Martinez's grateful voice echoed up as she secured herself for the ascent. Thank you, all of you, especially you, Coda girl. You never gave up. But as the rescue proceeded, the two mysterious men stepped back and made final phone calls, their voices carrying new urgency and what sounded like requests for immediate backup. The truth was coming out, but powerful forces were mobilizing to contain it. The storm was arriving, but an even bigger storm of justice and revelation was brewing. Alex stood next to Coda, both of them watching as Captain Rodriguez's team worked to bring Specialist Martinez to safety. The red hoodie still draped across Coda's back fluttered in the increasing wind, a bright banner of hope against the darkening sky. But this rescue was only the beginning. Whatever Coda had found in those tunnels, whatever evidence of buried crimes was threatening powerful people, the real battle was just starting. And at the center of it all stood a 5-year-old boy and a German shepherd who had refused to give up on doing the right thing, no matter what the cost. The approaching storm would test their resolve, but it would also wash away the lies that had kept Sarah Martinez trapped and forgotten for 2 long days. Justice was coming, carried on the wind and rain, guided by the unwavering loyalty of a K-9 officer who knew that some things were more important than following orders, especially when those orders came from the wrong people. As Sarah Martinez was finally lifted from the drainage channel, injured but alive, the crowd erupted in cheers that drowned out the thunder overhead. But the 2 mysterious men were already backing away, speaking rapidly into their phones and calling for reinforcements that would arrive too late to stop the truth from spreading. The real story was just beginning, and Alex and Coda had made sure it would be told. As Specialist Sarah Martinez was carefully lifted from the drainage channel, her injured leg secured in an emergency splint, the full scope of what had happened began to crystallize in everyone's minds. The woman who emerged from that underground prison was not just a rescued emergency responder, she was a witness to something that powerful people had tried very hard to silence. The moment Sarah's feet touched solid ground, Coda's professional composure finally broke. The German shepherd pressed against her partner's good side, whining softly with relief and joy, her tail wagging for the first time since the crowd had noticed her 2 days ago. Sarah's hand found Coda's head, and for a moment, the reunion between the K-9 team was the only thing that mattered in the world. "Good girl, Coda," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "You never gave up. You brought help just like you were trained to do." Alex watched the reunion with tears streaming down his dirt-streaked face, finally understanding the full magnitude of what Coda had been trying to accomplish. This wasn't just about a lost dog finding help. This was about a professional partnership, a bond between teammates who would never abandon each other no matter what the cost. But their emotional moment was interrupted by the arrival of 3 black SUVs that pulled up to the park's entrance with the aggressive precision of a military operation. The 2 mysterious men who had been trying to interfere with the rescue suddenly straightened, their phone conversations ending as they prepared to meet their reinforcements. Captain Rodriguez noticed the new arrivals immediately, his experienced instincts recognizing the signs of a situation about to escalate beyond emergency response into something much more dangerous. "Sarah," he said quietly, helping her steady herself against the rescue equipment, "those men who've been trying to stop us from helping you, they just got backup. A lot of backup." Sarah Martinez looked toward the approaching vehicles, and her expression hardened into something that mixed fear with determination. "They're here to clean up loose ends, me, Coda, and now everyone who's heard what we found." The implications hit the crowd like a physical blow. They weren't just witnesses to a rescue anymore. They were witnesses to evidence of crimes that someone with serious resources wanted to keep buried. Alex looked up at his mother with the kind of confusion that comes when the adult world reveals itself to be far more complicated and dangerous than any child should have to understand. "Mom, are we in trouble because we helped Coda?" Zara pulled her son closer, her protective instincts at war with a growing sense of injustice. "No, sweetheart, we're not in trouble for doing the right thing." But even as she said the words, doubt crept into her voice. The men emerging from the black SUVs wore the kind of dark suits and serious expressions that suggested they had the authority to make anyone's life very complicated, very quickly. Mrs. Chen, drawing on years of experience dealing with difficult situations in her classroom, stepped forward with the quiet courage of someone who'd spent her career protecting children from adult failures. "Sarah," she said directly, "before those men get here, maybe you should tell us exactly what Coda found. If something happened to you, someone needs to know the truth." Sarah Martinez looked around the circle of faces. Parents, children, ordinary people who'd been transformed by circumstances into something approaching heroes. Her training told her to maintain operational security, but her conscience told her that these people deserved to know what they'd gotten involved in by simply choosing to help. 3 weeks ago, city development crews were supposed to start construction on a new community center about 2 miles from here, Sarah began, her voice carrying the professional tone of someone delivering a report. But preliminary ground surveys kept getting delayed for bureaucratic reasons that didn't make sense. Alex listened with the intense focus that children bring to stories they sense are important, even when they don't understand all the details. Coda and I were brought in for what we were told was a routine training exercise, testing new detection protocols in underground environments. But when we got to the tunnel system, Coda immediately detected something that wasn't supposed to be there. The approaching men from the SUVs were closer now, moving with the purposeful stride of people who expected their authority to be unquestioned. Human remains, Sarah continued quickly. Multiple sets, buried in what should have been an empty storm drainage system. But these weren't recent remains. They were old, probably decades old, and they were buried with the kind of care that suggested someone knew exactly what they were disposing of. Captain Rodriguez's radio crackled with static, but the voice that came through was different from his usual dispatch, more official, more threatening. Captain Rodriguez, this is Federal Emergency Management. You are ordered to cease all rescue operations immediately and transfer custody of all personnel to the arriving federal agents. Rodriguez looked at his radio with the expression of someone who'd just been told to ignore everything he'd been trained to believe in. Since when does FEMA have jurisdiction over local rescue operations? The answer came not from his radio, but from the lead man stepping out of the first black SUV. He was tall, gray-haired, and carried himself with the kind of authority that comes from years of making problems disappear. Since this became a matter of national security, Captain, the man announced as he approached, I'm Director Collins, Department of Homeland Security. We'll be taking charge of this situation from here. But Alex, still sitting next to Coda and still wearing his dirt-stained clothes like armor against adult duplicity, asked the question that cut through all the official-sounding explanations. If you're really the good guys, he said, his 5-year-old voice carrying across the park with devastating clarity, then why are you more worried about stopping us from helping than you are about helping Specialist Martinez? The question hung in the air like a challenge that couldn't be answered without revealing the truth. Director Collins' expression shifted slightly, the practiced mask of authority cracking just enough to show the calculation underneath. Son, there are things about this situation that you're too young to understand. I understand that Coda was trying to save her friend for 2 whole days, Alex replied with the stubborn logic that makes children so dangerous to people with things to hide. And I understand that you didn't try to help her until we made you. Coda, as if sensing the tension rising around her young protector, moved closer to Alex and fixed Director Collins with the kind of steady, intelligent stare that working dogs use when they're evaluating a potential threat. Sarah Martinez, despite her injuries and exhaustion, found her voice again. Director Collins, isn't it interesting that Homeland Security showed up so quickly to contain a routine rescue operation? Almost like someone was monitoring the situation and waiting to see if the truth would come out. The crowd was beginning to understand that they were witnessing something much bigger than a simple rescue operation. They were seeing the machinery of cover-up in action, watching as powerful interests tried to silence inconvenient truths. Mrs. Chen stepped forward again, her teacher's instincts recognizing a teachable moment about justice and courage. Director Collins, these children have learned an important lesson today about helping those in need. What lesson do you think they'll learn if they watch you punish people for doing the right thing? The question struck home. Director Collins looked around at the faces of the crowd. Parents, children, ordinary citizens who'd been transformed by circumstances into witnesses to something they were never supposed to see. But it was. What happened next? That would become the moment everyone would remember for the rest of their lives. Alex stood up from where he'd been sitting beside Coda, reached up, and gently untied his red hoodie from around the German Shepherd's back. For a moment, he held the small garment in his hands, looking at it as if making a decision about something much larger than a piece of clothing. Then, with the deliberate movements of someone much older than his 5 years, Alex walked directly up to Director Collins and held out the hoodie. Here, Alex said simply. Coda doesn't need this anymore because she found her friend, but maybe you need it more than she does. Director Collins looked down at the offered garment with confusion. I don't understand, son. It's to keep you warm, Alex explained with the patient tone children use when adults are being particularly slow to understand. Because you must be really cold inside if you think helping people is wrong. The words hit Director Collins like a physical blow. Around the park, parents started crying. Even some of the other federal agents looked uncomfortable, suddenly seeing their mission through the eyes of a child who couldn't understand why rescuing people would be classified as a threat to national security. Coda seemed to sense the emotional weight of the moment. She walked over to stand beside Alex, not aggressively, but protectively. Her presence a reminder that some bonds, between partners, between friends, between those who help and those who need help, are stronger than authority or fear. Sarah Martinez, leaning on Captain Rodriguez for support, found her voice one more time. Director Collins, Coda found evidence of what looks like a mass burial site connected to a construction project that's been delayed for bureaucratic reasons. If you're really interested in national security, maybe you should be investigating who's been burying people in city infrastructure projects instead of trying to silence the people who found them. The revelation hung in the air like thunder. But this time, it was followed by something more powerful than lightning. The sound of phones starting to ring throughout the crowd as people began recording and sharing what they had witnessed. The story was spreading beyond the park, beyond Director Collins' ability to contain it. Social media was carrying the tale of Alex and Coda to thousands of people who would share it with thousands more. Director Collins looked around at the crowd, at the phones recording everything, at the evidence of his failure to contain the situation. His carefully planned operation to silence inconvenient witnesses had instead created something far more dangerous. Heroes whose story was already going viral. "This isn't over," he said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. Alex picked up his red hoodie from where Director Collins had let it fall and carefully draped it around Coda's shoulders again. "Yes, it is," he said with the finality that only children can muster. "Because everyone knows the truth now, and you can't make people forget about helping someone who needed help." As if on cue, the storm that had been threatening finally broke. Rain began falling in earnest, washing the dust and dirt from the playground equipment, from the rescue scene, from Alex's face and Coda's fur. But it couldn't wash away what had happened here, or the lesson that a 5-year-old boy and a German shepherd had taught an entire community about courage, loyalty, and the power of refusing to give up on doing the right thing. 1 week later, Specialist Sarah Martinez was recovering in the hospital when she received a visitor she'd been hoping to see. Alex walked into her room, holding a carefully wrapped present, with Coda walking beside him, wearing a new collar that identified her as an official therapy dog for the children's ward. "We brought you something," Alex announced, climbing carefully onto the chair beside Sarah's bed. Inside the wrapping paper was his red hoodie, freshly washed and folded, with a small note attached. "For when you and Coda go on your next mission," the note read, in careful 5-year-old handwriting. "So you'll always remember that helping people is the most important job in the world." As Sarah hugged the hoodie and Alex petted Coda's head, the truth about the buried remains was already making headlines across the country. Director Collins was facing congressional hearings, construction projects were being investigated, and families who'd lost loved ones decades ago were finally getting answers. But in that hospital room, surrounded by the quiet satisfaction of a job well done, the real heroes of the story were just enjoying a moment of peace together. A specialist and her canine partner, back where they belonged, with a young friend who'd proven that sometimes the most important thing an adult can do is listen to a child who sees what everyone else has missed. The red hoodie would go on many more missions, but it would always carry the memory of the day when a 5-year-old boy and a German shepherd proved that courage doesn't come from authority or power. It comes from refusing to give up on helping those who need it most. If this story touched your heart, please share it with everyone you know. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories of courage and kindness, and let us know in the comments how this story inspired you to make a difference in your own community. Because the truth is, we all have the power to be heroes. We just need the courage to listen when someone needs our help.